Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers have officially signed Christian Wood. So what's his role going to be with the team? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers the first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always going to be free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with over 20,000 subscribers to the channel, all of whom reacting in general enthusiasm. Many people reacting in general enthusiasm, which we'll get to here in a second in terms of the Lakers fan reaction to the Christian Wood signing. Certainly as impactful a late summer signing as you are going to find around the league. Wood, the most talented free agent, but a lot of things to kind of break down and sort out. So we're going to keep going through kind of reactions to Christian Wood. He had some things to say about the Mavericks to Marc Spears, and we want to talk about his role, who his role impacts. Kind of a day later, Andy, what happens now with Christian Wood, with adding another player to the rotation who is, absolutely 100% NBA rotation worthy, all of these things to a pretty deep team already. There are so many interesting questions about what this is going to look like and how the Lakers are going to handle it going, once camp opens.
Yeah. First, really quickly, I want to address an elephant in the room with the show, something that I've seen a few people comment on. I am aware that my screen, my side of it, is blurrier than Brian's. I have been doing everything I possibly can using different types of screen wipes, like specifically designed for computer screens. Nothing seems to be working. If you have suggestions, please leave them in the comments.
Because like another 6 months of this, you're just going to look like you're in witness protection.
I know. I cannot fix this for the life of me, and it is driving me insane. If you have solutions that are not just go to Staples and buy screen wipes, because I promise you, I've done multiple varieties of this. If you know something else, please let me know.
Also, another suggestion that is not totally welcome: get a new computer.
Right? No.
We're not looking for that either.
That's off the damn table. I'll go into the Wit Pro look before I get a new laptop.
So. Yeah, but the first thing I wanted to ask you is because this is I think and no pun intended, the starting point with any conversation with Christian Wood and about Wood in terms of role and and stuff like that, and what the Lakers do with him is the starter versus bench thing. And I know you had said with a lot of emphasis on yesterday's show, reacting to the signing, that you think he needs to come off the bench, and some indication that you may get your wish.
Yeah, reading from Jovan Buha from The Athletic, his piece that everybody should check out. It's very, very detailed with a lot of really good numbers in it about Christian Wood. And he said, quote, "The early expectation is that Wood will come off the bench with Rui Hachimura, the likely front court starter, next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, according to team sources. At minimum, Wood will be the primary backup center behind Davis, while occasionally teaming with him in two big lineups. He should average around 20 minutes a game with everybody healthy." He also pointed out that Davis played 100% of his minutes at center last season, 76 minutes of them at center the season before. LeBron played 99% of his minutes last season, either at power forward or center. And this, in and of itself, I realize this is not set in stone, and, Christian Wood crushing it in camp, or maybe, a two big lineup as a starting unit looks incredible during the preseason. Things change, but this being at least in dark pencil gives me a lot of immediate ease and comfort, because, again, LeBron at the 3 defensively, that to me is a deal breaker. Like, it just will not work. You are forcing things that really shouldn't be happening for the sake of adding Christian Wood to the starting lineup in ways that I don't think are necessary. It also, too, indicates that Christian Wood was not lured to the Lakers by any type of promise, but rather being told, you're going to have a good role, but it's going to be the good role that we choose and we dictate, which ultimately is, I think, the best thing for the Lakers. And I think the best thing for Christian Wood himself, if he really wants to showcase not just what he can do on the court, but what he can do for a team culture, which is one of the biggest perceived, fair or not, red flags about the guy.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. It's like, with Wood, it doesn't, if he wants to really rehabilitate his reputation, rehabilitate his career, and set himself up to be somebody that anybody would sign, like to a real contract, not just a veteran's minimum or something like that, but like, 3-4 years, 10, 12, 15, $18 million, whatever it is. He has to show that he can be productive and willing to play a role on a good team, because at this point in his career, he's 28 years old, I believe. And so, he's not young enough anymore that you say, okay, we can, take him and develop him into something else. If you're a developmental team, he's old enough now and with enough reputation, you say, we don't want him getting in the way of our younger guys that we are trying to grow around. And if you're a good team, you say, well, that we can't have, what do we do with him? Because he won't play a role on a good team. So what do we do with him? If he this is why I think
it's very similar, by the way, really quickly, to before the Clippers turned out to be a good landing spot for Russell Westbrook, the situation he was dealing with.
Yes. It's why, from a strategic standpoint, I do think this was, I don't know what his other landing spots might have been, but to choose a team like the Lakers, a contending team that will insist that he play in the lane that they construct for him, or probably cut him, I suppose. Like, strategically, it made a lot of sense for Wood to choose this group, because it's the only way for him to establish real value in the league, is to try to flip what you're talking about, Andy, on its ear. This idea that he will not do what is required to play a role in a good team. He needs to come off the bench, or be willing to come off the bench. And I can't imagine the Lakers told him anything differently, because you're right. Even pushing Anthony Davis to power forward at this point in his career, I think, is not a great idea. Like, both of those guys are kind of aging defensively, as versatile as AD is, into a spot that makes a lot more sense. And so certainly LeBron, to a lesser degree, Anthony Davis. So I agree with you. I don't see how this really works. And then when AD doesn't play, the 15, 20 games a year where AD doesn't play, then Christian Wood starts at center, I would assume.
Yeah, I think he would, unless Darvin Ham, and a lot of coaches do this, just want to keep the rotation intact, and he decides to play, hypothetically, Jackson Hayes, who's getting spot minutes at best. Right. He decides to start Hayes, just
start Vanderbilt. You go really small with LeBron at center, or whatever it might be. Matchup
exactly. And AD and Christian Wood will play some minutes together at some point over the season, because there are ways that can be really useful. I just think, as in particular a starting look, I think it's a really bad idea. And if we were already hearing reports that Christian Wood was being eyed for that role, or been told, you got a real good shot of starting, wink, wink, come on over for the veterans minimum, that would give me a lot of pause about just the season moving forward. Like, it would just feel like they're putting themselves in a really bad position. Instead, and this is interesting, I had not thought about this, but I heard it discussed on the Lakers Nation podcast, friend of the show. I'd forgotten there had been some reports that some players were not into bringing in Christian Wood. And if nothing, we don't know who the players are, but there's only a few who matter You know, like if Max Christie has objections,
I can think of a couple guys who wouldn't be into the idea, but that's as much based on self-preservation than it is anything else.
Yeah, we're going to discuss at some point. Jared Vanderbilt may not be wild about this. Torian Prince may not be wild about this, but they don't get a vote. But the guys who are important, everyone knows, if nothing else, it's a sign that the front office will occasionally make decisions on their own while consulting with the players who matter, as they should.
Who gets squeezed in the rotation? Who sits? Who plays? How does this impact the rest of the roster? We'll talk about that and read some of your reaction from the YouTube page coming up next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by FanDuel. You can get ready for the NFL season, which kicks off tonight with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet just $5, $5, and you get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. You can use the bonus bets on spreads, on player props, over-unders, all sorts of different options. And all customers who bet just, again, those $5, you get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is really easy to use, great user experience, easy to navigate. You're going to love the experience, all these different betting options right at your fingertips. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Okay, so generally speaking, when a team signs a player, certainly a talented player, flaws or whatever aside, Christian Wood is talented. Nobody's debating that. The fan base is excited by that. They got a minimum player to add to a good roster and stuff like that. Some of the comments we got, and to say the least, heavy comment day on Wednesday.
Heavy traffic day.
Yeah, and thank you all very much. In the wake of the Wood signing, here's one from Arcanado 4366. Rui was horrific on defense till they put him next to AD and joined a good team, and he magically became okay. Wood could be the same. I like how he used the word could be the same. Didn't say he would be, but he could be. I think this from 1982 Crenshaw, awesome. This is a good signing by the Lakers. It's on LeBron and AD and Darvin to help make sure Christian succeeds on the Lakers. I would say it's also a little bit on Wood himself. This could be a game changer if they help and really embrace him, because he can flat out score the ball, gives the Lakers great depth and insurance policy against injury. Maybe now we can beat the Clippers, which everybody ever talks about, but bothers the hell out of me. Love this pickup. This from Alex Merling 79. Love this pickup from us. His 3-point shooting will be a tremendous asset. God, it's so hard to read some of these things really quickly. Melanin non-code or I don't know. 7555. Depth, and more depth. We've got potential out the wazoo to go all the way. Let's go Lake Show. And this, Andy, to me was kind of like the theme to the reaction, which was like, this could be really good. Like there's a lot of potential if it works, if the culture can help it, if sort of the glass half full interpretation, like if he can come to the Lakers and the Lakers culture can and the stakes and all that can reach him, that this has a lot of potential for Wood and for the Lakers.
Yeah, I don't say this just to flatter our listenership, our viewership, knowing that flattery will get you everywhere, but the truth is I think this reaction that we saw in the YouTube comment section is a really good reflection of our audience, because the majority of the reaction was excitement, which is warranted, because whatever flaws or red flags come with Christian Wood, and we have discussed them, we will continue to discuss them, the upside potential is not just there, it is legitimately exciting. The scoring that we know he brings inside and outside, it's exciting. The interchangeability for him with different front court players is exciting. The pick and pop possibilities with D'Lo and LeBron, Austin Reeves, these are exciting. But when you and I brought up those red flags and those flaws, we saw very little pushback from the listenership, the viewership, in terms of just, you guys are being negative, you guys are being haters, you want the Lakers to lose, you're going clickbait, just trying to piss everyone off. Because I think our audience is smart enough to get it. Like, they get what we're talking about, and they get that we were not trying to dampen any enthusiasm. They get that we brought up a lot of the positives and why this could be really good. And I thought it was just really smart reaction to everything we said.
Yeah. And Lakers fans, generally speaking, like, I think Lakers fans enjoy, as they should, the entitlements and the arrogance and all that stuff, because it's like, you know what? Our team wins like all the time. Like, we're just better, like 17 titles. And it's not like the Celtics where there wasn't like, there's no like filmed footage of like half their titles because the camera hadn't been invented yet. Like, the Lakers are a modern era success story, and that's pretty cool. And so, yeah, like, there are franchises out there that like get to the playoffs like 3 times every 25 years. And it's fun to,
I mean, hell, there's some that get to the playoffs regularly and just don't win championships.
And it's fun as a fan to lord that over other fan bases. Like, that's part of the fun. But Lakers fans are also really smart about basketball. Like, okay, fine, a little entitled, assume that everybody's going to come to the Lakers and all that, which is also kind of fun too. But they know what they're talking about. And I feel like this is the time of year that it is totally appropriate and totally fun to think about, what if this works? Because look, we talked about this. This is not a risk-free move for the Lakers. It is a low-cost move, but it's not risk-free because they could sign someone else who might be more useful. They could bring a different body that would ultimately prove better. If Wood doesn't work out and you have to cut him 40 games in because you've spent 40 games trying to make this guy work and it doesn't, you can't get back that time. You can't get back that continuity. It is not risk-free. But there really is upside, and it's not made up and it's not invented. And this is the time that it makes total sense to think about, but it could work. And if it works, the Lakers benefit in a really great way, because now, Andy, they've got more legitimate rotation players, and we can carry this into the next segment. They have more legitimate rotation players than they have spaces to play them. And that's a tough problem for Darvin Ham, but it's a great problem for the Lakers.
Yeah, speaking of some of the reasons to be optimistic, in the piece that we referenced from Jovan, he pointed out that Christian Wood's a little under 38% from his career from behind the arc. He's made 36% from behind the arc 5 of his 7 seasons in the NBA. A little under 42% on catch and shoot threes.
By the way, on good volume. Just I'm going to cut you off, but the 3-point shooting, it's not 2 a game; it's 4.5. Right. So it's good volume.
And a little under 42% on those catch and shoot threes last season, which is really good, particularly for that position. So I started digging through a little more stats. The last 4 seasons, he's been 36% or higher on above the break threes, Christian Wood, and 39% or higher in 3 of those 4 seasons. And he seems to prefer above the break over corner threes, or just, I guess, wasn't situated there a lot. But that's a really good mark for the hardest available, the hardest 3 to make distant wise. So that's good. Also, too, like, his overall rebounding numbers don't necessarily fly off the page, but his defensive rebounding numbers are actually consistently very good. Like, per cleaning the glass, he's been in the 76th percentile or higher since becoming a rotation player. Last 4 years, like a true rotation guy, 84th percentile or higher the last 2 seasons when it comes to defensive rebounding percentage. And the Lakers last season, they were not awful, on the defensive glass, but they were not great either. They were not as good as they needed to be last season, particularly, after they moved Russ. I think that was one area where they actually did miss Russell Westbrook. So this is an area where I think Christian Wood also can help out and fuel that optimism that people are talking about.
Yeah, and Jovan, while not making any bones about the defensive reputation, does note that it may not be quite as bad. He says he's not necessarily the turnstile that many presume him to be, and we'll get into that, because, like, his length is important. He is 6'10", 6'11", 6'10", I think is the official listing.
I've seen him listed at 6'9" and 6'10".
Yeah. So, but wingspan over 7 feet, 7'3", I think, is that one. He's a long body. So let's talk about the role. Let's talk about how they fit him in, because the front court is crowded, and that's if you're only considering the big lineups. If you go small, it's even more crowded. So we'll do that next. So Wood made got a little tension on the social media today, talking to Marc Spears at ESPN, and had some things to say, Andy, about the Dallas Mavericks, both coming to LA and coming to Dallas. So this with Mark and Andscape at ESPN. I've always wanted to be a Laker. I know we can win a championship. Communication with the coach is big key. Coach Ham and I go back to our Milwaukee days, and we've had great conversations every day about this opportunity. He believes in me and told me I'll be playing a big role and knows what I can do. I'm looking forward to this, and for sure motivated after what Dallas did.
First of all, it's worth noting, while I'm sure the relationship between Christian Wood and Darvin Ham is solid, Darvin Ham's always been known as a great people person. You and I, when we were around him more during his assistant coach days with the Lakers, immediately liked the guy, immediately identified how people could gravitate towards him. They played 13 games.
Yeah, I mean,
it was the Milwaukee
reaction too. He's barely spent more time on the Bucks than I have.
Right. The Milwaukee days were a short segment.
They really bonded quickly before the Bucks let him go.
Right. But that being said, what caught a lot of people's attention, obviously, is the part where he said after what Dallas did. Talked a little bit with Nick Angstadt, who covers the Mavericks for Locked On Mavs, and he said he felt comfortable with us relaying this because he's talked about it on his own show. There is a strong opinion with Team Wood, Christian Wood, his agents, reps, all that stuff, that as the season went along, the Mavericks began reducing Christian Wood's minutes, reducing his role, that they resisted starting him when, to be fair, there actually was a discussion about it, and there were some Mavericks fans who thought that's what they should have done, because they were trying to lower his market value to make it easier to retain Christian Wood, because there would be less competition, certainly less economic competition that they would have to match. That is Nick is pretty confident that is what is being referred to.
And, Nick said, this is something when we did our scouting report on Wood, a few weeks ago, in anticipation of something like this, talking about who they ought to be pursuing. That was one of the criticisms, is he is a guy who thinks he is better than he is, thinks he deserves more in the league than he has earned. Going back to Jovan's piece, and this is something that we've talked about, the Lakers in signing Wood passed on somebody like Biyombo, way lower ceiling with Biyombo, but better defender, better locker room presence, better as a guy that will willingly play the role that he's being asked. I think with Wood, like the concern is, like, while everything is going well and he's sort of getting what he wants and it's early and he's rah team guy, as it gets closer to, wait a minute, I'm only playing 14 minutes a night, I got a contract coming up, like it's going to get harder and harder and harder, he's not going to like it anymore. Biyombo sat for 3 weeks, he's not going to say a word. Like, all of those are real concerns and all of those are legitimate. And so when you do see a comment like that one, it is noteworthy, because I wouldn't have said it. I just would have left that alone. If I am Christian Wood on my way out of Dallas, with his reputation, the fact that nobody else wanted to give him money either. It wasn't okay that the Mavs lowballed him and somebody else swooped in with a mid-level or a mini mid-level or a biannual exception or anything. I would have left that out if my goal is to start to rehab my image.
Yeah, I mean, look, with the caveat off the top that I did not see Christian Wood in Dallas on an 82-game basis last season, nor would I ever put it past either Mark Cuban or Jason Kidd to try to orchestrate some half-baked, frankly, stupid scheme, because both of them have a history of half-baked and, frankly, stupid schemes. This feels like a really bad way to handle the situation. If you actually have any interest in keeping Christian Wood at all, like if you're indifferent to keeping him, I guess, okay. But if you had any interest at all in bringing him back, because that's the only reason you would look to lower his market value, unless you're just really vindictive a-holes, this feels like a unnecessarily dangerous game by them to play. But also, too, the Mavericks were a team trying to make the playoffs last season and are in extreme we need to keep Luka happy mode, purposely tanking their season. I know they packed it in a couple games earlier than necessary, but this stuff that Christian Wood, I think, or certainly Nick has led me to believe, and I think he's right, is referring to happened well before that. That is a really, really either cart ahead of the horse or myopic way of missing the much more important picture, which is why I just don't buy it.
Fair or not to him, to the situation, to any of it, it feeds the I'm the victim sort of thing. Everybody else is wronging me kind of reputation. It's just not, is it a gigantic red flag? No. I mean, guys talk. It's just that it's a comment in the offseason for a guy who clearly didn't leave on good terms. But a lot of that season was a tire fire last year, and it just got worse and worse and worse as it went along. But if you are a person who is skeptical and you're kind of paying attention, you sort of think it through in that way, then a comment like that makes you, you're probably a tick or two more concerned about fit and about culture than you were, say, before you read that from Marc Spears at Andscape at ESPN.
The Hall of Famer, by the way. Congratulations.
That's right. Congratulations
to Marc Spears.
To him. But it's just, we'll wait because for tomorrow's show, we want to do, Jared Vanderbilt, who is probably more directly impacted by this than anyone other than, I guess, maybe Jackson Hayes.
Jackson Hayes, I think, is most directly affected.
But is
Vanderbilt is too.
And he's extension eligible, and kind of quietly became an extension eligible this week. Not that we necessarily expect the Lakers to give him one right away. You don't just jump on that, but necessarily. But Vanderbilt's role is a really interesting one. His salary is interesting. His future is interesting. And it's very much impacted by this. And so maybe for Friday's show, we'll get into who maybe isn't going to play now that Wood is here, and how this impacts the front court and even the swingman rotation with like Reeves and Christie in smaller lineups and all that. But overall, Andy,
Taurean Prince,
sure. I mean, I see him as more of a three, right? But guys in that sort of 2-3 who would move down in small lineups.
Sure, but his minutes could be affected by
absolutely. So we'll get deep into that for the next show. But just as we wrap here, the more you think about this, in terms of just really fascinating people and skill sets and positionality and all this stuff to add to a roster in September, this is like a 10 out of 10. The combinations and all this stuff that they're going to start working through both in camp and probably for the first month or so of the season, month or two. It's so intriguing. I'm excited just from a basketball fan standpoint because there's so many different ways they could do this.
Look, man, assuming everybody on this team stays relatively consistently healthy, this team's stacked, man. Like this is a stacked lineup with tons of different combinations and versatile options. And, heading into this season, or heading into this offseason, I should say, talked about, the shooting that the Lakers always need. They've addressed a lot of the shooting, particularly if Max Christie plays the role I think he's going to play. I think he's already established himself as somebody with 3-point potential. You're adding Christian Wood, you're adding Taurean Prince, D'Angelo Russell, for all of his faults. He's an established outside shooter. If Austin Reeves continues what he did all of a sudden you've got, that's not, maybe they're not the Warriors 2.0, but it's not a problem.
Good. And it makes it so it matters less if Gabe Vincent's playoff shooting is his regular season shooting. It matters a little less now if Rui's playoff shooting doesn't carry over to what has been typically low percentage regular season shooting. It still matters, but it matters less. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff is really important. So we'll talk about that too. Where the Lakers kind of stack up now, like the roster's set. So lots to get into for Friday's show for you everydayers. We'll see everybody then. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show and hang out and leave comments and leave questions. See everybody on Friday.